The familiar hum of my apartment filled the room, the soft whir of the air conditioner, the distant city sounds, the faint echo of my violin cases resting in their stands. It was supposed to be another evening of practice. I had a world tour coming up, and every note mattered. I sat at my desk and opened my shared music cloud, intending to review the playlist Sheng Jun and I had curated together. We were supposed to rehearse remotely, refine duets for the next concert. My hand instinctively went to my left wrist, the one that had been injured weeks ago, a minor strain. Sheng Jun assured me, nothing that would stop me from performing. But the moment I clicked play, everything changed. A series of audio notes had been uploaded, marked with Sheng Jun's name and a date that made my stomach twist. I hesitated for only a moment before listening. "Did you hear about her hand injury?" A familiar male voice sneered. "Sheng Jun. She'll never recover in time for the tour," a female voice said, mocking. "Ye Xiao-Xiao." I froze. My chest tightened. My hand, still tender from the injury, shook. Not from pain, but from rage and disbelief. "Honestly, I think it's perfect," Sheng Jun laughed cruelly. "We can replace her. The world tour doesn't need Wei-Wei. She's nothing without her precious violin." I dropped my phone. The audio continued to play, and I couldn't stop it. My heart hammered in my ears as their laughter became a physical weight pressing down on me. Every shared rehearsal, every promise, every whispered, "I love you," all lies. Every note I had trusted him with, every melody we had crafted together, had been a stage for his betrayal. I tried to breathe. I tried to remind myself it could be a mistake, a prank, a misunderstanding. But the next audio memo shattered that thought. "She deserves this," Ye Xiao-Xiao said. "Replacing her is just the beginning. Sheng Jun owes me more than loyalty. I'll make sure he follows through." I couldn't move. My body felt foreign, my mind fracturing. The violin cases at the corner of the room, which I had loved like extensions of myself, now seemed like instruments of my humiliation. My hands clenched so tightly that my fingernails dug into my palms. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to throw the phone across the room and shatter it, and the world. Instead, I sat, frozen, trembling. The room seemed to tilt, the ceiling spinning above me. My carefully controlled life, the life I had built note by note, had been turned into ash by the people I trusted most. Then, amidst the chaos in my chest, something shifted. Not despair. Not fear. Cold, deliberate fury. I pressed the play button again, listening closely, absorbing every word, every sneer, every malicious laugh. And with each passing second, I felt my old self dying, a self who trusted too easily, who forgave too quickly, who let others define her worth. When the final memo ended, silence filled the room. But inside me, a new rhythm began to beat, a rhythm that was sharp, dangerous, unrelenting. I whispered to myself, voice trembling but resolute. "They think I'm broken, that they've won. They have no idea who I'm becoming." I opened a secure channel to contact Ye Xiao-Xiao, the infamous Black King of finance, Ye Xiao-Xiao's brother. His reputation preceded him, cold, ruthless, decisive. If anyone could help me reclaim my life and exact justice on Sheng Jun, it was him. I hesitated only briefly before typing the words that would change everything. "I need your help. Sheng Jun betrayed me. Your sister. She must pay for what she's done." A pause. Then a single line appeared on my screen. "I'll help you, but you must become the best in the world again." My lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. The woman who was Tang Wei-Wei, the famous violinist everyone admired, was gone. In her place, a new woman rose, one who played a deadlier tune. The next morning, I woke with a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. Fear, because the betrayal still burned like acid in my chest, leaving raw edges where trust used to live. Exhilaration, because for the first time in weeks, I felt a purpose that went beyond music. It was vengeance, control, and survival all rolled into one. Ye Xiao-Xiao had agreed to meet me. The man had a reputation as cold as steel, ruthless in business, and utterly untouchable. And yet, when I had typed those desperate words, he had responded, not with judgment, not with scorn, but with a promise of help. A promise that came with a challenge: become the best again. I arrived at his office, a towering glass fortress that reflected the city's skyline like a mirror of ambition. Inside, the walls were minimalistic, the lighting deliberate, everything perfectly controlled. And in the center of it all, standing beside a grand piano I didn't expect to see, was Ye Xiao-Xiao. "You've lost more than just a tour," he said, eyes scanning me as if reading not just my face, but my soul. "You lost your confidence, your reputation, and your focus. I can help you reclaim all of it, but you must commit. Not just to music, but to becoming untouchable." I swallowed, my throat dry. I will. I'll do whatever it takes." He studied me silently for a moment, his gaze piercing. Then he nodded. "Good. We start with your body, your hands, your technique. I've arranged the best therapists and trainers for your injury. You will recover, Wei-Wei. But recovery alone isn't enough. You must surpass who you were. Every performance, every note, every nuance must remind the world, and Sheng Jun, why you are irreplaceable." The first weeks were grueling. My left hand, still tender from the strain, refused to cooperate. Pain flared in my wrist, up my arm, into my shoulder. But Xiao-Xiao was relentless, insisting on physiotherapy sessions, targeted exercises, and strict regimens. "You will not fail because of weakness," he said, observing me as I practiced scales. "Weakness is a choice." And each time I stumbled, each time my fingers slipped or my bow faltered, I felt a flicker of anger flare brighter than the pain. This was no longer just about playing beautiful music. This was about taking everything Sheng Jun had tried to steal and turning it into a weapon. By the third week, my confidence began to return. My fingers no longer shook when pressing the strings, my wrist moved fluidly, and my bow glided over the violin with precision. But it wasn't just my body that was transforming. My mind sharpened, calculating, focused. I memorized the audios that had destroyed me, dissected them, analyzed them. Every sneer, every mocking word, every plan to replace me became fuel. One night, after an intense practice session, Xiao-Xiao approached me quietly. "You are ready," he said. "But are you prepared to face him? Sheng Jun will be cautious now. He senses something." I wiped sweat from my brow and smiled coldly. "He thinks I'm broken, that I'll never return. He thinks I'll cower. He has no idea the woman he betrayed is standing right here, stronger than ever." Xiao-Xiao's lips quirked into the faintest smile. "Good. That fire is necessary. But remember, Wei-Wei, vengeance is a symphony. It requires timing, control, and precision. One wrong note, and it all collapses." I nodded, feeling the rhythm in my chest, the deadly tune I had promised myself I would play. Every rehearsal, every note, every deliberate movement was no longer for the audience. It was for me and for him. The woman who had cried in her apartment over betrayal was gone. In her place was Tang Wei-Wei reborn, stronger, sharper, and playing a tune that no one would ever forget. The night of my comeback approached like a predator circling its prey. Every detail of the performance had been meticulously planned: venue, repertoire, lighting, audience. Every note I would play, every expression I would make, was designed not just to reclaim my name, but to remind everyone who had doubted me, especially Sheng Jun, exactly who I was. I arrived at the concert hall hours before the audience. The empty seats stretched endlessly, an ocean of potential judgment and expectation. My violin rested carefully in its case, polished and gleaming under the stage lights. The nerves in my stomach were not fear, they were focus, anticipation, controlled energy waiting to be unleashed. Ye Xiao-Xiao appeared silently behind the curtains. "You're ready," he said, voice low and steady. "Remember, each note is deliberate. Each pause has meaning. Every movement, every expression, tells a story." I nodded, gripping the violin tightly. My hand no longer trembled. Pain was gone. Confidence had replaced it. My body had been rebuilt, refined through weeks of therapy and relentless practice. But more importantly, my mind had been sharpened by betrayal, fueled by strategy. This was no longer about music alone, it was about reclaiming power. The hall filled quickly. Critics, fans, and industry insiders, all of them unaware of the storm about to hit. And somewhere in the audience, I knew, Sheng Jun would be listening. Perhaps smugly. Perhaps confident that I had fallen. I would shatter that illusion tonight. I stepped onto the stage, the applause washing over me in waves. I bowed once, gracefully, letting the audience feel the energy of a performer who had been tested, broken, and reborn. Then I lifted my violin, positioned it under my chin, and drew the bow across the strings. The opening note rang out, clear, resonant, and deadly. Every scale, every flourish, every vibrato carried precision and emotion. I played not just with skill, but with intent. Every note a message to Sheng Jun, every chord a warning to those who had betrayed me. From the first movement, I could feel the audience leaning in. Critics scribbled furiously in their notebooks, trying to capture what they were witnessing. But no description could do justice to the power of a woman transformed, playing music that spoke of heartbreak, fury, and triumph all at once. Midway through the performance, a low murmur ran through the crowd. Some recognized the intensity in my style, the subtle flourishes that were unmistakably mine but sharper, more precise, and undeniably commanding. I was no longer the prodigy they had admired. I was the woman who had been betrayed, and who had returned stronger than ever. After the final note, the hall erupted in applause. Standing ovations, whistles, cheers, it all blurred together. I lowered my violin, eyes sweeping across the audience. And there, at the back, I spotted Sheng Jun, pale, shocked, and immobile. His confidence had crumbled the moment he realized this was no ordinary performance. Ye Xiao-Xiao appeared at my side, his presence steady, his gaze sharp. "He saw that, didn't he?" he asked. I nodded. "He did. And he'll never underestimate me again." He allowed a faint, approving smile. "Good. But the symphony isn't over. This was just the first movement. Remember, revenge, like music, is about timing." I smiled, the thrill of control and triumph coursing through me. The violin in my hands felt like an extension of my will, every note a weapon, every melody a shield. For the first time in months, I felt whole, strong, unstoppable. And as the audience roared their approval, I knew Sheng Jun's era of underestimating Tang Wei-Wei was over. I had returned, reborn, and playing a tune far deadlier than any they had ever heard. The morning after my triumphant performance, I awoke to a world that felt different. The city buzzed with news of my return. Critics hailed it as a rebirth of genius. Fans flooded my social media with praise, and invitations for interviews and performances poured in. Every headline, every mention, every tweet reminded me that I had taken the first step in reclaiming my life. But I knew the battle was far from over. Sheng Jun's betrayal hadn't just cost me trust, it had cost me influence, leverage, and years of career momentum. To truly win, I needed more than applause. I needed control. I needed him out of the picture entirely. Ye Xiao-Xiao's message appeared on my phone. "Are you ready for the next movement?" I typed back without hesitation. I was born ready. An hour later, he appeared at my studio, his presence as commanding as ever. "You've sent a message," he said, arching a brow. "But now it's time to dismantle him. Reputation, contracts, endorsements, everything that ties him to the music world. You will strike carefully, methodically, and publicly." I listened intently as he outlined the plan. Every move, every leak, every subtle revelation about Sheng Jun's manipulation would be executed with precision. Ye Xiao-Xiao's connections were formidable. His network spanned the music industry, media, and finance. Anyone who could assist in turning the tide would. "You want him ruined?" he asked, voice low. "Then you must be more than a musician. You must be a strategist. The world will respect your art, but it will fear your power." I smiled faintly. Good. Let him feel the same betrayal I felt. Let him know what it is to lose everything. The first target was his public image. I began by discreetly sharing verified information about his contractual misconduct with industry insiders. Evidence that he had manipulated his own bandmates, mismanaged tour funds, and used collaborators for personal gain. Everything that had once been hidden behind charm and reputation. Within days, whispers became articles. Articles became debates. Discussions on forums and social media exploded. Fans who had once idolized him began questioning his integrity. Sponsors hesitated to associate with his name. His carefully cultivated charm was dissolving into skepticism and anger. Yet, throughout all of this, I never lost focus on my craft. My daily rehearsals, guided by Mo Ran, became sharper, more intense. Each practice session reminded me that my power didn't come solely from exposing him. It came from my talent, my precision, my rebirth as an artist unafraid to dominate. "You're balancing art and strategy well," Mo Ran noted one evening, watching me navigate a complex concerto with flawless execution. "Most would falter under the weight of vengeance. But you thrive in it." I didn't respond with words. I let the music speak, every bow stroke a declaration. I was no longer a victim. I was a force. Weeks later, Sheng Jun attempted to salvage what remained of his career. He contacted venues, promoters, even former collaborators, attempting to explain, to charm, to convince. But the world had already shifted. The whispers, the leaks, the damning evidence had left a permanent mark. His reputation was cracking like a violin string under stress, and I was the musician holding the bow. When I received his first public apology, the words felt hollow. I never intended to hurt Wei-Wei. I was misunderstood. I laughed softly, bitter and precise. Misunderstood. I whispered to myself. You understood perfectly. That's why it hurt so much. Mo Ran appeared behind me, arms crossed. Good. Let him speak. Every word he utters reinforces what the world already knows. Keep playing your symphony. Let him crumble. And that was exactly what I did. Every performance, every public appearance, every calculated disclosure became part of a larger composition, my counterpoint of revenge. The woman they had mocked was back. Stronger, sharper, and in control. By the end of the month, Sheng Jun was a shadow in the music world. The contracts were cancelled. Sponsors withdrew. His arrogance had led him to believe talent alone could protect him, but the world had witnessed the deadly tune of a violinist reborn. The months that followed were a blur of practice, performances, and strategic exposure. Sheng Jun's downfall continued to accelerate, each day proving that my calculated measures were working. But for me, the journey wasn't just about dismantling him. It was about reclaiming my own mastery and reminding the world that Tang Wei-Wei was irreplaceable. Every morning, I began with rigorous warm-ups, my left hand, once weak and trembling, now precise, agile, and unyielding. Each note I played was deliberate, a declaration of the discipline and focus that had rebuilt me. Ye Xiao-Xiao observed silently most mornings, occasionally correcting a posture or technique, his presence both commanding and calming. "You've improved faster than I expected," he said one morning as I practiced Paganini's Caprice No. 24. "Not because of your skill alone, but because of your determination. Most would crumble under betrayal. You harness it." I paused, glancing at him. Determination? No. This is something beyond that. This is survival. And maybe revenge. He didn't reply. He simply nodded, letting my words hang in the air. The first major public performance since my return was the International Violin Gala, a prestigious event broadcast worldwide. As I stepped onto the stage, the familiar rush of nerves hit me, but it was tempered by a new force. Clarity. I had a purpose beyond applause. Every eye in the hall, every camera lens, every critic's pen was my audience, and every note I played was a sword. I began with a piece I had composed during my recovery, a haunting, intricate melody that captured every shade of betrayal, grief, and awakening. The audience was silent, captivated by the intensity and precision. No one had seen a performance like this from me before. Each phrase, each glissando, each controlled pause carried emotion sharp enough to cut. Backstage, I knew Sheng Jun was watching. He had sent a message to try to reclaim some semblance of dignity, but the moment he heard the opening chord, I knew his arrogance had finally met its match. Ye Xiao-Xiao appeared beside me, his dark eyes fixed on the stage. "Let him see," he murmured. "Let the world see. Your return must be undeniable." I nodded, closing my eyes briefly and letting my fingers glide over the strings. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt pure power, not anger, flowing through me. The applause that followed the final note was deafening, yet I hardly noticed it. My gaze was fixed on the reality I had created. I had returned not just as a violinist, but as a force no one could ignore. After the performance, the press swarmed me, their questions ranging from technical prowess to emotional depth. I answered calmly, deliberately, projecting confidence and grace. "This piece reflects personal growth," I said, allowing just a hint of defiance to show. "Sometimes, the hardest notes we play are the ones life gives us, but they make us stronger." In the crowd, I could see Sheng Jun's face pale as reporters dissected his misconduct, many connecting the dots publicly for the first time. He had underestimated the power of a woman scorned and reborn. That evening, as the gala ended and I walked through the empty backstage corridors, Ye Xiao-Xiao fell into step beside me. "The world will recognize your name again," he said quietly. "Not because of the scandal, but because of you. Your music, it's lethal in its beauty." I allowed myself a faint smile. And, to think, I used to cry over betrayal, believing I was powerless. Now, it's my weapon. He studied me, a rare softness in his eyes. "It suits you. But remember, Tang Wei-Wei, there's more to conquer than just him. Your career, your legacy, and maybe your heart." I felt that warmth stir again, deep and cautious. I had survived betrayal, exacted revenge, and reclaimed my craft. And yet, beside Ye Xiao-Xiao, I realized something that no performance could teach. There were victories beyond the stage, and they might be even more dangerous and thrilling than any symphony. The weeks after the gala were a whirlwind of rehearsals, interviews, and international invitations. My career had regained momentum, stronger than before. But alongside the music, something unexpected began to grow. A quiet, steady connection with Ye Xiao-Xiao. He had been my guide, strategist, and unflinching supporter, but never once had he forced himself into my life emotionally. There were no grand gestures, no declarations, only the steady presence of a man who understood both the fragility and strength of my soul. And gradually, I began to notice it. The way his gaze lingered, the subtle protection in his movements, the rare softness in his voice when he corrected my posture during a difficult passage. One evening, after an intense rehearsal of a newly composed concerto, I collapsed onto the couch in the practice room, exhausted yet exhilarated. Xiao-Xiao sat across from me, arms crossed, silently observing. "You've improved beyond what I expected," he said finally. "But there's more than just technique. You're playing with a depth that wasn't there before. That comes from understanding yourself." I laughed softly, wiping sweat from my brow. Understanding myself, or understanding what betrayal feels like. He didn't flinch. "Both. You can't separate pain from power. Every note you play now carries both, and it's intoxicating to watch." I blinked, suddenly aware of the electricity in the room. It wasn't just my violin vibrating, it was us, the tension, the unspoken understanding that existed between us. Our workdays became longer, filled with strategy meetings and practice sessions, but the boundaries slowly blurred. Small moments, like him adjusting my bow grip or sharing a quiet smile when I executed a complex passage flawlessly, started to feel intimate. One night, we were reviewing a video of my performance from the gala. "You were perfect," he murmured, leaning closer. "Not just technically, but emotionally. You've transformed completely." I met his gaze. "I've transformed because you believed in me when I couldn't even believe in myself." His lips quirked into the faintest smile, and I felt something stir inside me, a warmth I hadn't felt in years. I did nothing extraordinary, he said quietly. I merely waited for you to see your own strength. But I won't lie. Watching you rise, watching you claim what's yours, I've never admired anyone more. The days passed, and the bond between us deepened without words. I found myself seeking his counsel for matters beyond music, career decisions, interviews, public appearances. His insight was razor-sharp, yet always measured. And slowly, I began to trust him, not just as an ally, but as someone who had my best interests at heart. One rainy evening, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, he walked me to my apartment. The streets glistened with reflections of neon lights, the city hushed beneath the rain. We stopped at my door, the air thick with unspoken words. You've grown into a remarkable woman, he said softly, his gaze locked with mine. Stronger than I ever imagined. And yet, I feel like this is only the beginning. For you, for your music, for us. My heart thumped, cautious yet alive. Us. I echoed, testing the word. Yes, he said simply. I'll remain by your side, Tang Wei-Wei. Not as a shadow, not as a strategist, but as someone who believes in you completely. You've survived betrayal, reclaimed your life, and now, I hope you'll allow me to be part of it. I swallowed, feeling a delicate warmth blossom in my chest. For the first time since Sheng Jun's betrayal, I allowed myself to consider a future where I could trust again, not blindly, but deliberately, with someone who had proven unwavering loyalty. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized that the rhythm of my life had shifted. I was no longer the woman destroyed by betrayal. I was Tang Wei-Wei, fierce, brilliant, and capable of love that was as measured and precise as every note I played. And for the first time, I felt that my heart could beat in harmony with someone else's, not because it had to, but because it wanted to. The world was finally listening, not just to my music, but to my story. Weeks of meticulous planning, guidance from Ye Xiao-Xiao, and flawless performances had done more than restore my reputation. They had amplified it to heights I hadn't dared imagine. But my mission wasn't complete. Sheng Jun still existed as a shadow in the industry, clinging to what remained of his influence. He was arrogant enough to believe that my success was luck, temporary, or exaggerated by media hype. He didn't realize that every note I played, every public appearance I commanded, was part of a calculated crescendo, one designed to obliterate him completely. The final act began with a gala sponsored by multiple international orchestras, where Sheng Jun had been scheduled to perform as the headline artist. I had quietly arranged for a last-minute substitution, my own performance. The announcement went public only hours before the event, leaving him scrambling, humiliated, and unprepared. Backstage, Ye Xiao-Xiao appeared silently. "This is your moment," he said, voice low but firm. "Every eye will be on you. Every critic, every patron, every colleague of his, they'll all witness what betrayal cannot destroy." I nodded, gripping my violin with steady hands. This time, my performance would not only be about reclaiming my place, it would be the final blow. The lights dimmed, and I stepped onto the stage. Murmurs ran through the audience. Many hadn't even realized the change until I raised my bow. Then silence. The first note rang out, piercing and perfect. Every melody was deliberate, each movement a declaration of power and triumph. The audience was spellbound, not just by my technical skill, but by the raw intensity that radiated from me. This was a woman forged in betrayal, tempered in fire, and finally free to play the deadliest tune of all, justice. Midway through the performance, a spotlight briefly caught Sheng Jun's face. Shock and fear mingled there, his lips pressed into a tight line. He had underestimated me for the last time. Ye Xiao-Xiao's hand brushed lightly against my shoulder as I continued. "Keep going," he whispered. "Every note, every phrase, it's all for him." And I did. My violin screamed, soared, and whispered with precision. Every subtle inflection, every technical flourish reminded the world, and Sheng Jun, that talent alone could not be stolen, manipulated, or destroyed. My music had become my weapon, my revenge, and my signature. By the final chord, the hall erupted in applause. But it wasn't just the audience who reacted. Critics, journalists, and industry insiders immediately began analyzing Sheng Jun's failures in comparison. Articles appeared within minutes. The rise of Tang Wei-Wei, a violinist reborn, Sheng Jun overshadowed by former protege, betrayal and brilliance, how Wei-Wei reclaimed her throne. Sheng Jun's world crumbled. Contracts were terminated, sponsors withdrew, and his credibility vanished almost overnight. I had not only returned, I had rewritten the narrative entirely. After the gala, Ye Xiao-Xiao and I walked through the empty halls. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and excitement, the echoes of my performance still lingering. "He won't recover from this," I said quietly, a soft smile touching my lips. "No," Xiao-Xiao replied. "And you didn't just defeat him, you claimed your power. That's the difference between revenge and triumph. You didn't just fight back, you rose." I looked at him, feeling the warmth in my chest grow. "And I had you beside me. I couldn't have done it without you." He caught my gaze, his eyes softer than usual. "You could have. But I'm glad I was there. And now, the world sees not just your music, but your strength. And I see the woman I've quietly loved, finally claiming everything she deserves." I swallowed, realizing that the culmination of my revenge had also become the beginning of something else, something quieter, deeper, and far more profound. For the first time, I let myself consider the future, not just as Tang Wei-Wei, the violinist who had survived betrayal, but as Tang Wei-Wei, the woman who could love, trust, and triumph again. The morning after the gala, I woke with a sense of completeness I hadn't felt in years. Sheng Jun's ruin was now public knowledge. The music industry had witnessed my rise, my precision, and my relentless drive. My name was no longer whispered. It was declared. Tang Wei-Wei was untouchable. Yet, even in this triumph, I felt something else, an unfamiliar calm. My hands, once trembling from betrayal and injury, rested lightly on my violin. The strings sang under my touch, as if acknowledging my journey. I was whole again, but this time, stronger, wiser, and finally free to embrace life on my own terms. Ye Xiao-Xiao appeared in my studio without announcement, a rare smile touching his features. "You played beautifully," he said simply, voice low and warm. Every note was a declaration, every pause a warning. But now, there's nothing left to fight, only what comes next. I studied him, my heart beating faster. After months of training, strategy, and subtle moments together, we had reached something delicate, unspoken. Trust had been earned, loyalty had been proven, and something more personal had grown between us, a slow, steady flame that neither of us had rushed nor forced. I started, unsure how to voice what had been swelling inside me. I never thought I could trust again. Or let someone in. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the faint warmth of him. "I've never asked you to," he said softly. "I only waited for you to see that trusting doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger, if it's with the right person." My breath hitched slightly. "And you think you're that person?" He smiled faintly, the shadow of his usual stoicism softening. "I don't claim to be perfect, but I will stand by you. Always. And I'll wait as long as you need, because you deserve someone who respects your heart as fiercely as you command your music." The sincerity in his eyes made me tremble, not with fear, but with hope. Months ago, betrayal had left my heart frozen. Now, I felt warmth spreading, cautious but undeniable. The city skyline glowed behind him through the studio's floor-to-ceiling windows. I stepped closer, my violin resting at my side. For the first time, I allowed myself to look at him not as a mentor, strategist, or ally, but as the man who had quietly loved me, guided me, and never faltered. "I want to try," I whispered, my hand brushing against his. "To trust again. To let myself be happy." He took my hand gently, intertwining fingers with mine, a simple gesture heavy with promise. "Then we'll move together," he said, step by step. And no one, not betrayal, not fear, will take that away from us. That evening, we performed a private duet, a quiet practice session, no audience, no expectations. But every note spoke louder than words ever could. My bow glided across the strings, Ye Xiao-Xiao's presence steady and grounding beside me. Music had been my weapon, my shield, and my voice, but now it became the language of our unspoken connection, a harmony of trust and shared victory. When the final chord resonated through the studio, I felt the last remnants of fear and doubt fall away. I was no longer the woman destroyed by betrayal. I was Tang Wei-Wei, reborn, powerful, and free to love. Moran leaned close, his lips brushing my ear. "This is only the beginning," he murmured. I smiled, resting my head lightly against his shoulder. "Then let it be beautiful." The violin's notes faded into silence, but in that quiet, I realized the greatest symphony of all was not the music I played. It was the life I had reclaimed, the trust one had earned, and the love I could finally embrace. And for the first time in years, I knew the song of my life was mine and mine alone to compose.